This podcast episode is supported by EBRD. Support to small and medium-sized businesses is an important part of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development's mandate. Activities to support small businesses include direct and indirect financing through partner institutions. The EBRD's Advice for Small Businesses team provides the knowledge, the network, and the skills to help emerging businesses innovate, thrive, and succeed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Recursive podcast. Our next guest is only 27 years old, but he already has several successful ventures in the e-commerce industry. Ruslan Leteyski founded his first company while he was still in high school. He is the founder of CheckOutX and Vanga AI, e-commerce solutions for Shopify and WooCommerce that help merchants increase their revenue. His current project, TimeCraft, is a platform for providing session-based digital services. And Ruslan is also an active angel investor. Some of the businesses he supported included CloudCart, Klear, Puzl Coworking, and CoLiving Semkovo. Ruslan, it's been long due that you're here. I've invited you several times, and I'm very happy that you're here with us today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invite. I really appreciate it.
It is impressive how young you are and how many projects you have behind you so far. One successful exit. You started still building websites and founded your first company while you were still in high school. How and why do you think you got the entrepreneurial bug? Where does it come from?
I think it's just pure curiosity. I was really interested in making stuff. I didn't think about money when I was in high school. I didn't even think I can work professionally in the industry. I really thought that because I cannot draw and I was doing a lot of web design, I thought it's just a fun hobby, but I can never be a professional web designer because I'm not an artist. This is like some kind of mental model that I had. So it was I just wanted to have my own projects, and I started building on them, and eventually this turned into building businesses. So that was kind of the natural progression. And I think like every other startup entrepreneur from like my generation, I watched The Social Network when I was in high school, and I wanted to, like, immediately I remember watching The Social Network and starting a social media project, and the next day it was hilarious.
What do you want to become when you grow up?
Well, I want to be a balanced individual. I want to be incredibly successful in business. I want to make a lot of money. I want to be healthy. I want to progress in extreme sports, and I want to explore the world and build a happy family.
So you want it all?
Of course.
Do you think that you would come back to acting at some point?
I don't know. We'll see. Right now, I don't do acting because it's not that I don't have that much time. It's because I want to be able to travel. And we're going to talk about digital nomadship, I guess, as well. But acting and digital nomadship don't work together. You cannot make a play or a film via Zoom. Maybe you can, but not yet.
But definitely a positive attitude towards traveling helps in acting as well, because often the sets are not in your home place.
Yeah, but that's not the good type of traveling usually.
How did you spot the opportunities in the e-commerce industry? Most of the solutions that you have developed so far have been in this industry. And what led you actually to the creation of CheckOutX? Tell me about the story behind it.
So, first about the opportunities, I have this new way of thinking that opportunities are in every industry. It's just a matter of digging deep into something. So for me, I've done dropshipping before. I've done these kind of projects, and I had the experience in building software. And for me, I was thinking, okay, instead of chasing the gold as a dropshipper, I can sell the shovels, and I can build software for people that are way better than me in dropshipping and like e-commerce and these kind of stuff. So it just felt natural. I was all right as an e-commerce merchant, but I knew I had this special skill in building tech, which others didn't. So it made sense to partner with these kind of guys and help them be better using my own skill set instead of trying to be something that I'm not.
How did you know that you have this special skill set?
Because before that, I worked in the startup industry. I worked as a web designer for a long time. And while working as a web designer, I picked up coding, because when you're a designer in a startup, usually you're like 12 months ahead of everyone else, because there's like 3 devs and so many requests.
Okay.
So I figured instead of doing irrelevant things as a designer and waiting for the devs to catch up, I can actually pick up coding myself and help them out. So in my last company, I was hired as the head of design, but in reality, 70% of my work was building, like, programming.
And still, CheckOutX for a while was a sort of a gold mine, right? You were very successful also in terms of revenue. I remember at some point we were quoting the numbers that you would see in the commercial industry, and they were just impressive. So you were actually profitable from day one, more or less.
Yeah, really like the book, Profit First. It really changed my perspective on business, especially when I grew up in the first wave of startups in Bulgaria. So I was there when like OneShop and 11 were founded, where like when Telerik sold their company, and I worked only in startups. And for me, I don't know, it didn't make sense how these companies just don't care about profit and they just care about only growth and this kind of stuff. And for a while, this is why when I was building CheckOutX, I didn't want to build a startup. I wanted to just make some money and to build like a normal business. And when I read this book, it kind of clicked that you can have a different attitude. And it turns out that most businesses, not only startups, but like mom and pop stores, they don't make any profit. Like most restaurant owners make a normal salary at the end of the day, while they work twice as much. And the Profit First framework is a good way to be very disciplined about your profit. You say, okay, I'm going to take X% profit every month, and I'm going to first take the profit and then figure out how to work with the rest of the money. And if you do software, you have crazy good margins, so you just don't overspend on hiring and marketing. And if you have a good product market fit, you're still going to grow and make great results. We had over 50% profit margin in our company.
Do you think that the profit first approach is applicable for every business, or is it just applicable for certain niches in the industry?
I think it's applicable for majority of businesses. Okay. There are businesses that cannot generate profit from day one. And in some cases, it makes sense to lose money in order to acquire something that is valuable. For example, if you're doing some kind of R&D, if you're doing some kind of, if you're capturing a market and you have a network effect, it's like investment in the future. A company like Dynamics can never be profitable from day one because they need to spend 10 years, hopefully, to build a product. Same thing for like marketplaces in this kind of, or social media networks, where they need to, their asset is their network. But majority of startups, and especially SaaS, they don't have network effect, and they don't need to invest 3 years into building a product. They can build a product in 3 months and start selling it. And I think when you're trying to make a profit in the beginning, it forces you to build a sustainable business model. Or if you lie to yourself and say, oh, it doesn't matter that we're losing money today with our Shopify app, we're going to make it in 10 years, probably the world won't need your product in 10 years, because this is the dynamic of the business.
Yeah. What happened to CheckOutX afterwards?
So we built an alternative checkout to Shopify, which they didn't like because their main way of making money is through the checkout. But their checkout took for many years. So we became the number one alternative checkout in the industry. And at some point they told us to fuck off. And we agreed that we're gonna basically keep our current customers and we won't onboard new ones. So we still have some customers. I don't know why they're using it, because finally Shopify built their own one-page checkout, which is great. I love it. Even Vanga was built on their new checkout.
Why didn't they buy CheckOutX? Well, maybe it would have been easier.
No, because first we were rerouting people outside of their software. It didn't make any sense technologically. And from a business perspective, again, it didn't make any sense because they wanted to stop the whole bypassing the checkout thing. If they buy us, like we have no added value for them, and they would encourage other people to do the same, right? We had, at one point, we had a new competitor every day, like a new copycat every day. People would copy our website, like they would put the same website, just change the logo. People would buy on like our brand names, branded keywords and this kind of stuff. So for them, it was cancer. And it was very obvious from the start, but it was a good business. And we started out of wedlock. So for us, it didn't make sense to raise any capital. We had so many offers to raise capital. And every time I would tell them, guys, this is going to stop, you know that. Like, we're not going to make, like, we're not going to grow from 600,000 monthly recurring revenue to 6 million monthly recurring revenue, because at one point, they're going to pull the plug on us. And it was funny because, like, when investors see the numbers, they stop, I don't know.
They stop thinking.
Especially at that time, you know, fast.com was making the same money as us and had less customers than us, and raised $100 million. Bolt was raising also like tens of millions of dollars, and we were in the same space. So they would look at fast.com raising that money and Bolt raising that money, and so many investors would like cold outreaches. Even like great, like world-class funds would do cold outreach for us. It was great. I loved the attention, but I knew that this is not going to last. And Shopify finally, after so many years, they built their one-page checkout, which looks surprisingly similar to Checkout X. Most probably because that's the best way to build a checkout. But at the same time, now they advertise it as the fastest checkout in the world. So I'm kind of happy that I'm sure we inspired them at least a little bit to improve on their checkout.
Yeah, that's a great impact when you think about it. Wow. And when they turned you off, basically, when they kicked you out, how did you feel? I mean, at this point, the company had how many employees? 16 employees. Did you have a plan that what you're going to do next? Because you anticipated that sooner or later this will come. Were you already working on the next solution, or was it, okay, the business is gone and you had to go through a traumatic period? I don't know. I'm trying to imagine what happened in the office back then.
We knew this is coming.
Yeah.
And it's been many years that we would go back and forth, and they'll be like, we're going to stop you guys. We were like, okay. And then they didn't. And we did a couple of things. First, I reserved a big war chest of capital that we were going to try to use to pivot our way out of this. On top of that, we were building a WooCommerce version of Checkout X, which took, unfortunately, more time than we expected. So the plan was to start even before we got kicked out of Shopify.
I see.
But once we got kicked off, like everybody started working on that. So we launched WooCommerce version. We were quite arrogant, to be honest. We didn't expect how hard it's going to be to go outside of that ecosystem. And we didn't realize that when you build for an ecosystem, you design a product in a certain way. And every ecosystem works in a certain way. So our product was a total shit hole for WooCommerce people, because it didn't play well in their ecosystem, and it wasn't the right feature set for them. People on WooCommerce can change their checkout.
How are ecosystems different, actually? Shopify to WooCommerce?
So Shopify and WooCommerce are the two ends of an e-commerce platform. One example is that for WooCommerce, you host it on your own server, and it's an open source project, which means that you don't know what version is going to be, like on what version of WordPress they're going to be running. You don't know if their server is going to be working or not. For example, when your API is not working, you don't know if it's because their server just dropped or is it because there's something broken. And all of these things we would take as a given. We would take as a given that when there is an update, there is an update. Like everybody's
affected,
right? On WooCommerce, that doesn't work. And the other thing is, on WooCommerce, all the plugins kind of go into the main code base, and everything interacts with each other, and everything is kind of powered you inject code into the main system, where with Shopify everything works via APIs. So it means you have your own web app that interacts with the Shopify web app.
Okay.
And there's a lot of like internal dynamics, what WooCommerce supports, what Shopify supports, what the community is like, what they expect from a product, what are they willing to pay. There's all kind of stuff, like they're very different.
And how did you fail the expectations of WooCommerce users with the new app?
I think the biggest problem we had was we didn't talk to any WooCommerce people because they didn't need our product. Our number one selling point is that we are a one-page checkout for Shopify. So on WooCommerce, people have one-page checkout by default.
Okay.
So that this is already a mismatch. Another mismatch is that all the payment methods that we would enable that were not available on Shopify, they are available on WooCommerce because every payment gateway can build their own integration. We would do a lot of things very well on the Shopify ecosystem because the Shopify ecosystem, especially the checkout, is closed. So we would have an alternative where we can do an alternative implementation. On WooCommerce, everything is open. You can do whatever you want with your website. So all of these things did not really make sense. And also because we ported our product, we did not play well with the other ecosystem, like plugins and stuff on WooCommerce. But that's like secondary. The first thing is nobody needed a one-page checkout for WooCommerce.
I think that's actually quite a common mistake, especially in our industry. Maybe because engineers quite often just have fun engineering stuff. They don't necessarily would like to talk to the users and find out what kind of problems do they have, which are the pain points. This is something that I hear quite often. It's not the number one reason why startups fail, but it is definitely one of the reasons.
Yeah, but if you follow the startup advice, which I try to do now because I was tired of building products that nobody wants, this also doesn't work. You can just go and walk into a random room of people and ask them what their problems are.
Yeah.
You will be lost. You need to commit to something. You need to say, I'm going to be building, like, either I have a concrete idea or I have a very concrete idea space. Like, I want to be building checkout solutions for WooCommerce, right? This is a very concrete idea space. And there you can talk to people and you can find nuggets of gold. But if you just walk up to an e-commerce merchant and ask them, like if you ask 20 e-commerce merchants what your problems are, you'll be even more lost than when you started because everything is abstract. And when you go, especially if you have some kind of prototype and you show it to a customer and ask them what they think, like not in those words, you get way more feedback and like actionable insights than just asking them about a problem.
So you're saying that when validating a product, it's less about the mom's test, but actually developing something and then giving your users the opportunity to be able to imagine it, to see it, to experience it, and then afterwards ask for feedback.
I think it's a mix of both. But even the mom test, they're like, if you want to perform the mom test successfully, you need to have very, very specific questions that you already have a solution in mind. If you ask someone, like, how many times did you look up a recipe online in the past month, which is, I think, an example question, you need to know you're building a recipe website or something. You're not asking them what are your cooking problems. And the mom test is great, but you already need to have some level of understanding and some level of digging into a certain area because... And we're probably going to talk about that a little bit later, but I talk to a lot of ex-founders now. We all try to avoid building something that nobody wants. And we're like golden fish. Like we get so distracted. Every day there's a new opportunity, a new trend. And everything seems like a great idea until you do 5 hours of research and then everything seems like a dumb idea. And I believe you need to pick a very, very concrete thing to work on, and then you'll find the hidden gems.
I think it's also connected in some ways to confidence and optimism. I remember when I was younger, I would say much less confident. And I was supposed to write my bachelor thesis, and I would start and I would be thinking, okay, that's a real problem and that's a great idea and it's a great topic. And somewhere in the middle, when I was finishing my research and I was supposed to start actually writing it, I would think, that's so dumb. No one wants to hear about that. That's the wrong approach. And then I would just leave it. And I did that. I left it twice. The third time, I just wanted to graduate. I didn't care what's the quality, if it's a good problem or not. So I remember in the past week when I was actually doing the writing after all the research that I've done, I was just telling to myself, done is better than perfect. Done is better than perfect. Just finish it. And it was actually great. I had an excellent note. So I think sometimes it's also connected to our imposter syndrome or lack of confidence, where we start actually fighting our own ideas. So it is some kind of balance that we need to have in our head, where we are self-critical enough not to be arrogant and not to develop stuff which no one needs. But too much of it can also kill our own ideas. There was this quote that self-doubt killed more ideas than anything else, right?
Yeah, and at the end, what are you afraid of? Like, the worst thing that can happen is to work on something that's not going to be a success. But
are you afraid of that?
Well, I am and I'm not. Like, I have this part of me where I'm so afraid I'm going to waste my time that I waste way more time being afraid of wasting my time. So...
And then you waste time on thinking about it.
Yeah. So I think you should build things. Of course, most things would not be successful, and that's fine. But there's something magical when you put like a low fidelity prototype to someone and you see like they understand you, right? It's very hard to describe ideas and to describe solutions to things. And I've done that a lot of times. Like, I would go into a meeting and describe what I'm doing and to a customer, and they would like start rambling about something that I'm not doing. And then I would just show them from the prototype, and it would frame the conversation not only about the prototype, like we would still talk about other things, and especially things that the prototype is not. But it's just like a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? A prototype is worth probably like 1,000,000 words.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very hard to, if you have an abstract idea, to transfer the same abstract idea to the brain of somebody else. And the other thing is, all great ideas are dumb in the beginning. Like, nobody believed in Checkout X. Everybody thought it's like a retarded thing to do. Nobody understood why I would build an alternative checkout for Shopify. Everybody told me they're going to kick me out.
And how do you deal with all those people who would, I imagine, give you a friendly advice of how to build your product? I can imagine that the community and also the engineers that you're surrounded with, they keep on coming to you and they say, you can do this and you can do this. And this is also another factor for additional schizophrenia, where you start thinking, is what I'm doing actually dumb? Because so many people tell you that you should do differently. How do you deal with that?
First, I take it as validation. If I have a concrete idea that I'm working on and a big part of people don't get it, I take it as a good sign. I think if you stumble upon something that is not obvious, majority of people would not understand it.
That's a good point.
At the same time, I try to listen to people. Entrepreneurs are really bad at receiving feedback all across. Like, most entrepreneurs don't get feedback. And I know I'm like that, and I know all the people I give feedback to, like, totally don't disregard it. But I try to think about what they're saying, and majority of the times probably it's not relevant. Sometimes it's relevant and I take it into consideration. Like, sometimes somebody tells you something and it just clicks and you're like, actually that's very smart.
Someone told me a while ago while we were in a panel discussion that receiving feedback but also giving feedback is a skill set. It's not something that we are born with. It is something that we develop over time. I remember especially negative feedback would affect me very emotionally when I was younger. And at some point I just started breathing, listening to whatever critic someone is targeting at me, and I'll be thinking, okay, I'm going to breathe that. I'm going to listen to the whole thing, but I'm going to decide if it's relevant at a later point. I don't need to react right away, because do you see that when people, especially I believe in our part of the world, we're a bit more defensive than anywhere else. And when we receive a negative feedback, especially, we're eager to react, to defend ourselves, to say that is not true, I didn't do it, or I did it because...
You don't get it. Like, if you hear yourself saying to a customer, or especially to a potential customer, no, you don't get it, then just shut up.
Okay, you don't get it, what else?
I mean, if you say you don't get it, then you're starting to defend yourself.
Yeah, okay.
The good thing about building different products that I'm lucky to have is that you're used to being rejected, especially from customers, because that's the most important feedback, right? Mm-hmm. I expect that. I'm surprised when somebody tells me that's great. For example, for my new project, TimeCraft, majority of the feedback is great, I'd like to try it. And this is scary because I know they're not gonna... I'm sure I didn't figure out something that's great and magical and it's like an instant success, right? So I'm getting fake yeses, and I know that, and I have to push them now to get onboarded, for them to not be onboarded, and to see where they fail, right? And why they don't care about it. But if it's your first project, it's your baby, you're really emotional about it, you kind of associate your self-worth with the worth of the product. Mm-hmm. So every time somebody tells you your product is not good, you feel like you're not good. Yeah. But once you start doing that and you do a couple of projects, you get disconnected. And I treat it as a job. This is my job every day. It's part of the job to get rejections and to collect information. So I try to not be emotionally connected to the feedback.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you had all those great lessons from Checkout X, building for Shopify, building for WooCommerce afterwards. How did you implement them then in Vanga AI? Where is, by the way, the name coming from?
I don't know, it just popped up in my head. So, because Vanga AI was born as an extension to Checkout X. So we wanted to do something that's very similar to our core competency. And by the time Shopify announced checkout extensibility on their own checkout, and big part of the business of Checkout X was post-purchase upsells. So we wanted to build something for post-purchase upsells on Shopify. But because Checkout X and other competitors were so big in the post-purchase space, by the time we were about to launch something, there are already 50 companies that just did the post-purchase upsell thing. Mm-hmm. And we didn't want to do something that's cliche. And we tried, can we use some kind of artificial intelligence to suggest in a smart way what you need to buy, and not have the merchant pick every time, manually, when somebody buys this, you should offer them this, because it depends on the stock, it depends on many stuff. So I was really inspired by NitroPack. Mm-hmm. And what I really love about NitroPack is that you push a button and your website becomes faster. And I wanted to do something that's you push a button and you make 10% more revenue. Oh. This was the original idea. That didn't really work. But I think we listened to more feedback, and we iterated a lot over... we were really following our North Star metrics this time. And we would have a certain percentage of revenue that we want to add to all stores. And when we were not hitting that, we would start from there and ask, what can we do to increase the revenue of a store? Is it because our shop offers are not showing because of something? Maybe we need to place them in another place. Is it because our algorithms are not good enough? Maybe we can do something else. Is it because we're not showing enough products? Mm-hmm. And we just iterated a lot. We launched the product in 2 months, I think. And we kept building for 2 years after that. So every feedback we would get, we would try to become better and better and better.
Did you apply again the profit first model?
No, and this was my mistake.
Oh, okay.
The biggest problem and like failure of Vanga was the fact that we already had a staff that we wanted to keep because we thought we were a really strong team and we had money to spend. So it was a disaster. We started with a certain burn per month and a certain dev power that we have that was fixed. And then we needed to figure out the product after that.
Okay.
And that's the totally wrong way to build a business. If I would do it again today, I would just start a new company and probably take some of the people on, but not all of them.
Clean slate. Okay.
Clean slate, yeah. Because we had so much pressure to hit certain numbers that we would, like, it was really awful. We got to 10K MRR and we felt like this is a huge disaster. Where any normal SaaS getting to 10K MRR is some kind of a milestone. Like if you get to 10, then you can then make it to 50, to 150, etc. And we got beat by other companies that were more lean than us. And they were doing, I think we had better tech talent, but they could afford to do things that are not scalable at their stage and do better decisions and to do better stuff for their customers at the stage. And now they keep growing while we sold off the asset and we dispersed the team.
It's still an exit, right? So you sold Vanga. Are you happy with this decision, with the numbers?
I'm happy in the sense that I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about the world of micro acquisitions, as they call it, or now acquisitions.
Yeah.
And there is this whole world of building a software asset and selling it to someone. And there's this whole world of like some kind of private equities buying certain assets that I'm so interested in. I want to go back into that space, but as a buyer now. So it opened my eyes to a completely new universe that you can build something to a certain MRR and then sell it at a certain multiple, and someone would buy it and they would package it with something else. It's really interesting. It's totally different from what you read on the Recursive of someone building a $50 million company and selling it to Google.
So you're in a way looking for the next challenge. You keep on looking for those, right?
Yeah, now I think finally I have some challenges, but last year has been really tough to figure out what I'm going to do next.
How long did you take between the sale and working on the new project so that you maybe clean your head, think of how you're going to commit the next 5 to 10 years of your life, I guess? That's how long you need to build a really, really successful company, right?
I took 0 days off.
0 days off. Okay.
I spent the whole year working, and if you ask me what I did, I cannot answer. It was really tough because I would just explore and start working on a project and like drop it after 2 weeks or 4 weeks.
Okay.
Sometimes because it was not just a good idea, sometimes because I was trying to work with certain people on something that they started on and I was not passionate about the project. Sometimes because it didn't fit with the co-founder, or because a new shiny object appeared in the mirror.
Okay.
So yeah, I spent a year just searching really hard, and maybe if I didn't search that hard, it would have been easier.
Do you think that you wasted a year?
No.
Because you mentioned before that you're so afraid of wasting time.
I don't think I wasted it because I needed to explore different things, right? And I gave myself a year to figure out what I want to do next. And now I have 2 new ventures that I'm starting. Probably I won't do both of them, but I don't know which one is gonna like take off or not.
Okay.
So maybe it's not gonna be any of them, but I'm back to building stuff and starting a new business, and I'm really excited. I haven't been that excited since the early Checkout X days.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, that's a really good sign.
Tell me about the new project. Why are you so excited about it?
So I'm doing 2 things. First one is called TimeCraft. It's basically a platform where you can set up your consulting or coaching practice. So if you're someone that sells their time via sessions, you can set up a website and you have this kind of small system on the back end that you can basically manage your business. And it's really exciting because I was thinking about e-commerce a lot and how e-commerce has really progressed over the past 10 years with Shopify and WooCommerce and all the other platforms and the whole developer ecosystem. And I was thinking, okay, what is e-commerce? Because it's not only shipping parcels, right? It's not only sending boxes of stuff. There's types of e-commerce that are, for example, digital items. There's like digital services. There's all kind of other stuff that are happening that are also e-commerce, but are not the focus of everyone.
Sure.
Same day delivery is also a big thing in e-commerce that I think is going to grow a lot. And the other thing is we spend so much of our time in the metaverse right now. We think of the metaverse as the glasses, but the reality is everything in the metaverse is like if you're in front of a screen. A majority of us spend more than 50% of their time in front of a screen in the cyberspace.
Exactly, small screen.
But we don't spend over 50% of our income on digital stuff. Like we spend them on clothes, we spend them on rent, like all physical stuff. And I think this is going to change in the future. I think we're going to spend proportionally our time and money into whatever we invest in our time in, we're going to invest it in our money too. And I think digital services is going to be one of those things. And it's already happening. Like people are buying therapists online, doctors online. They have all kind of coaches, teachers. And all these people that are doing some kind of a service, they're either going to do their services completely online because it's more efficient. It allows them to travel. It allows them to have a way bigger total addressable market. Or even if they do it offline, they're still going to sell it through social media and like online booking and stuff. And there are a couple of platforms that do this kind of stuff, but they're relatively small. Like the biggest platform in that space is Calendly, which is not designed to do that. Calendly is built for booking sales calls and this kind of stuff.
True. I didn't know that people are actually using it to offer their services there as well.
So I think there is a space for someone to build something like what Shopify built in the e-commerce space or what Substack did in the blogging space and this kind of stuff. And I'm going to try to do that.
How are you going to help those merchants they could be, from what I understand, psychotherapists, coaches, what else is sold by the session?
Everything like
Definitely
you can be a teacher, like we have
a teacher, exactly.
stand-up comedians like right now like onboarding themselves.
Master classes, I guess, of all sorts can be also done online. So how are you going to support the merchants in their marketing efforts? Because I think this is also one of the challenges that you have generally in the marketplace.
Yeah, we're not building a marketplace in the first place. So our customers are people that already have a social media presence because that's the way they usually say, or they do some kind of advertising.
Okay.
So we are not bringing in the traffic, they are bringing in their own traffic. We're going to give them the tools to first build their page, very streamlined.
Okay.
We're going to give them the tools to manage their customers and to be able to retarget them, to map them, to know who is who's returning, and to basically understand their business dynamic. And we're going to help them by giving them advice on how to grow their social media presence. The reason we're not building a marketplace is because if you're a marketplace, you work for the marketplace. If you're a part of the marketplace, I do consultations on TimeCraft, and if I go to some other platform, every time somebody would go there, they would become their customer. So the marketplace would take my customers and offer them all kind of services.
Sure.
And they're gonna charge me a lot of money for what? For having my own presence, right? So if you have your own presence, it doesn't really make sense to direct that traffic to a marketplace. It makes sense to have your own independent page and checkout and all this kind of stuff.
Why is it called TimeCraft? I actually like the name.
Oh, it's because because it's very hard to describe all these people that they do this kind of session-based stuff, right? Because you can be a doctor, you can be some kind of a service worker, like a housekeeper or something like that. We also support offline stuff. You can be a coach. You can be so many things, nutritionalist, an astrologist, all these kind of people, they work on session basis, but there is not one thing that defines them. And this is why I came up with the term time crafter. So your craft is your time, basically. That's the name.
That is interesting. So it is a platform where you also make most of your time, basically, as a merchant. Yeah. You don't waste time on... You help them so that they can optimize and they can focus on what they're doing best, and that's their craft, usually. Okay, interesting. And why are you so excited about it?
I'm excited about it because first, there's a lot of fun people that do all kind of interesting things online. Anything from, again, a stand-up comedian doing something like being able to book a call with them, or like an astrologist that can like read the stars for you. At the same time, there is like a psychotherapist that can help you.
Yeah.
There's all kind of interesting people, and these people are not really high tech, so they're kind of falling behind on, like they have to do a lot of manual things and waste a lot of time doing that. I'm really excited because I can try to build an independent platform, and that's something that I haven't done right now. I've worked on somebody else's platform, so it's a new challenge for me. I'm really excited because if you start building your TimeCraft practice and you especially manage to do these things online, it allows you to, if you're from a country like Bulgaria, to sell to international customers, so make more money. And it allows you to travel and to be a digital nomad. And I really care about freedom, and I love digital nomads. I spend a lot of time on places like where they go. I'm not a full-time nomad myself. But I want people to be free. I want people to be able to make money and be happy, no matter where they're from. And I want to build an independent platform. So it's a really fun project to work on.
I wonder how TimeCraft is actually looking in the future, meaning I guess experiences will become also much more submersive than they are right now. Instead of looking at a screen, we might be probably experiencing in a totally different way. And that's also a trend that most probably we won't be able to stop, especially for certain sessions that, for instance, we have with psychotherapists. I myself have been in therapy, and I realized at some point that our brain is still connected to the geolocation. So you are in a certain state when you are physically in a certain space. And for psychotherapy, that was very relevant for me. But I'm a millennial, I'm not a Gen Z. I'm not a digital nomad just like you. So I couldn't do therapy when I'm on Zoom somewhere else, because I don't get into the state of mind that I need in order to get into the process of therapy. That was the issue that I've experienced. How is it now for, I don't know, for someone who is younger, who is much more part of this metaverse or digital world or virtual, whatever you call it?
I think a big part of it is first on AR glasses and stuff. I think what this is going to do is not that we are going to wear glasses, but I think it's going to push AR. And people are going to realize that majority of the things you can do on the glasses, you can do on your laptop or on your phone. Because we're already, again, looking through lenses. So I think many of the capabilities of current calls are just not being used to the maximum, especially people that are not working in this like very high-tech corporation where they take advantage of all the modern tools.
So you don't believe so much in the idea of Zuckerberg that we're all going to be in the submersive state?
No, but I think we're going to do way more AR on existing phones.
So future generations will have these lenses, not literal one, but more, they're going to be born with it because they will be growing up like that.
Well, yeah, I guess. But what I was trying to say is that if your therapist actually first, if you invest in good headphones and like in a good place to do calls, and then your therapist has a green screen behind of them, they have like a virtual background behind of them, they have a good microphone where you can really hear them in an intimate way, or all these kind of stuff, they have good lighting, then probably you're gonna feel more immersed even with Zoom and a laptop.
Okay.
And this is one of the things we're gonna try to do with TimeCraft, is to help these guys provide a better service, like a higher quality service. And the platform is not gonna do everything for you, but we also explore things like giving them the right equipment and this kind of stuff to figure out how they can be more immersive. And yeah, of course, at some point, I love the idea of AR and stuff. So if that becomes a more mainstream thing, I think TimeCraft is going to be on the top of the apps that people are going to use.
Speaking of nomads, you mentioned traveling quite often. Why is this such a big part of the goals that you have in life? Where is this coming from?
Well, I grew up wanting to travel the world and to experience life. And when the last time I was working in an office, when I was working in a company called Cactus in Paris.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was my job was great, my salary was good, but I could not afford to stop working, right? So I had, 20, 30 days a year to travel.
Yeah.
And it felt like prison. And every day I would have to go in the subway and do my 1 hour of commuting and go to the office and go back. And I would have to look at the calendar and figure out when I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And especially for me, I spend a lot of time in front of a computer for my work, and I want to be active in when I'm not working. And for me, that means doing all kind of nature/extreme sports like skiing, snowboarding, kite surfing, diving, all this kind of stuff.
To balance out the screen time, basically.
Yeah, and to see the world and to experience our reality.
What was the last exciting destination that you've been to, that you traveled to?
I just came back from the Polar Circle like literally 2 days ago. I swam with orcas and not blue whales, but humpback whales and sperm whales in the middle of the Norwegian Sea. It was amazing.
That must have been cold. I mean, swimming like literally for more than 30 seconds, you survived that? How do you do that?
There is no cold weather. There's just not good enough equipment.
Okay.
You get the right equipment. I did a power punch, which is basically go in with your bathing suit, and you cannot survive a lot of time.
Do you enjoy travel solo, or are you usually in groups, or I don't know, with your partner in life?
I travel with my fiance, and then we have some friends that we travel to certain destinations too. But usually, for sure, is my fiance, and then if we manage to grab some of our friends, it's great. If not, then we meet people there.
How about traveling solo and I don't know, maybe submerging even more into the culture? It's what I hear, and I've done it once or twice because I didn't have a partner in life, and I thought that's not going to stop me from traveling. And then you realize that you have a totally different experience because you're much more open to what is happening around you. You're seeking out also communication with people who are there. Have you tried that as well?
I haven't. It sounds great, but I won't tell my fiance, okay, I need to travel by myself. So I'm lucky that I met someone that can travel with me. And it's great because you have fun all the time.
And do you have a ratio of how much would you ideally work per year or per month, and how much of it would be traveling?
So I usually take around 20-25 days of vacation still. And I do a lot of working and traveling.
Okay.
So I'm going to plug my blog a lot. So like in my blog, which is leteyski.com, I have an article about how I managed to do both. It's about my schedule, my setup, and all this kind of stuff. But the great thing about working online is you don't have to skip work to go somewhere else. For example, I will be going to Thailand in a couple of weeks. I'll keep working on my things. Like I won't tell Like, I won't stop everything for a month and go back afterwards. I'll just work in a different schedule, and I'll still do my hours that I do every day. I'll still do everything that I do in Sofia.
How do you deal with time zones, by the way? Because it could be challenging, especially if your work is somehow related also to managing people, talking to people, meeting with them.
Yeah. It's actually better if it's not in the same time zone, because you can usually go somewhere to do some kind of activity.
Okay.
So a good example was my last winter. I spent 2 months into the Dominican Republic, and I would wake up 3:30 in the morning, which sounds unpleasant, but it's all right. And then by 12:30, I would finish work, or 1 p.m. And then I could go kite surfing.
Okay.
And I would be free. I would just go to bed early and wake up early. But it's actually worse when it's in the same time zone, because you have to manage all your meetings and work.
And then you're wasting your day, basically.
Yeah, and you can't really do that much of the activity that you're there for. And at the same time, you're not really working 100% productively. And you have to be very strict about how much you work. It's harder. It's easier if your work day moves to a time frame that there's nothing fun to do.
Okay. That's amazing. I have to say that after now talking to you for longer than usual, because usually we meet at events, and I have a very short span of asking you of who you are and what you're doing, and it's always like a rush. But I appreciate that you started already very lucky and with actually great success a couple of years ago with Checkout X, but you kept on doing your lessons and you kept on challenging yourself and exploring the way of doing startups in your own way, basically. So I appreciate that you're critical about the startup culture, and because we need to come now to an end, unfortunately, although I would like to talk to you a bit longer. I'm curious if there is one thing that you can change in the startup culture. It could be also how we present startups in the Recursive and the similar. What would it be?
I would definitely not focus on how much a company has raised, because right now this is the social currency.
Yeah.
It's like, this startup raised $100,000. This startup raised $1 million. This startup did that. And this is not a metric of success by any chance. But unfortunately, and you guys know that, I'm sure. But unfortunately, when I talk to founders, this is what they think about. Because we all want to be in the Recursive, right?
Yeah, it is.
And you guys don't talk about bootstrap companies that often. Because there is nothing to talk about, right? They did a profit, they grow.
Oh, there is a lot I would like to talk about, and I would like to write about a bit more about bootstrap companies, but they don't come to us they don't look necessarily for PR. They're usually very low key.
Yeah, that's true as well. Yeah. And I think that's probably the right approach. But in general, I meet so many founders that their first line of thought is, how do I get money from investors? And this is a wrong line of thinking. I believe, first, I talk a little bit more to kind of anti-VC, and it's not because I don't believe they're great. They are great. It's just everybody else is like talking on the other side of the fence. So I'm kind of... like, you can't really talk in a balanced way on social media. Nobody's going to listen, right? So I think venture capital is great. And there are these kind of moonshot ideas that would never take off unless there is capital injected into them. But many of the ideas are not moonshot ideas. And I think it makes sense to raise capital if you already have a flywheel and you have like the growth engine and you just need to put more fuel. I feel that most founders don't have an idea what they're going to do with the money they're going to raise, besides pay themselves salaries. They're like, we're going to hire more people and we spend more on marketing. Essentially, this is what they're saying all the time. But this means nothing, right? Unless you have a very clear idea that you need this and this person and you need to spend money on X, Y, and Z because you validated these channels are working, Usually you just raise money because that's what everybody else does. And I hope people would really consider what they need to focus on. Most often the problem is not they don't have enough money. The problem is they don't have a working growth channel, or they're not building the right product. It's not that they don't have the resources to build more features.
I hear you, and I for the most of it, I do agree with you. Although we are part of this problem, the way that you're describing it, somehow, instead of doing revenue and growing a business, many founders start with the idea that we need to focus on fundraising. That's all they do. Or not all, but it is some kind of like, it became a goal. It's not a fuel for the business, but it's a goal in itself. We're going to fundraise and we're going to... I also don't necessarily agree that they don't know what to do with the money once they raise them. It doesn't say that it's smart what they're doing afterwards with the money. But I have to say that the current economic downturn makes me quite optimistic. First, I believe that smart founders will be rather bootstrapping right now unless they really must fundraise, because naturally valuations will grow. As the economy grows, valuations will grow, which means that if you manage to preserve your tempo or pace, even if it's slower, it's not the fastest growth, then in a couple of years, the returns that you would have would be proportionally higher than if you did that a couple of years ago. And that is also true for the VC funds. Investing now is great, because whatever it is, it's going to take off better than it was a couple of years ago. And I think this is why we are going to also see now more and more bootstrap companies, and bootstrapping will become cool again. So I would love to do a bit more content on that. If you do know other bootstrap businesses, send them to us. They need to share their story, even if they're not doing PR campaigns right now, even if they're not fundraising, even if they're not hiring. We need their example, because I do believe that they have the DNA of the entrepreneur, which is, I'm going to build a business, a solid business that is actually solving a problem for my users, customers, whoever. And I am creating value, and that's how I generate money. That's the core of the business or doing business. It shouldn't be, I'm fundraising from that famous VC in the States. It shouldn't be like that. I totally agree here with you.
Yeah, it's great. And people should know how VC funds work. I think they need to read about the valuation, how they make returns. Because I think they don't understand that most of the returns of a VC is one out of 100 companies. And if you go to a VC, like your investors for meetup, and you look at the 100 people around there, you need to realize one will be the golden goose, right?
Yeah.
So one will really, really make it. It's like Squid Game.
At the same time, I do believe that founders need to be in love with their product. They need to be really focused and really, really optimistic. Otherwise, I think we won't be doing what we're doing. Sometimes I just, make it a bit like a field research for me. And I talk to founders who have started a couple of years ago, and I said, would you do it again? And most of them would say no. I wouldn't. Or I wouldn't do it if I knew how hard it is going to be. And that's the reality. We start with huge optimism, and it's a must, otherwise you won't survive. That's how I see it, at least, and that's what I see talking to founders.
Yeah, but life is hard anyways.
It's true.
Everybody you have to pick your own suffering, right? Your own pain. And I think if you start a second company, then it means you like it.
Yeah. Ruslan, it's been a pleasure having you here. I hope you would never waste time in your life, but you're going to learn also how to pace down maybe a little and just enjoy what's around you, regardless if you're traveling or not, because this is also important. You have great steps already behind you, and I'm sure that you're going to continue the ladder because I see your mindset. You're always looking for the next lesson, for the next experience, for another way to grow. And I'm very happy that you shared your story here with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you are just as passionate about innovation as we are, hit subscribe for the Recursive podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. We're everywhere. This podcast episode is supported by EBRD. Support to small and medium-sized businesses is an important part of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development's mandate. Activities to support small businesses include direct and indirect financing through partner institutions. The EBRD's Advice for Small Businesses team provides the knowledge, the network, and the skills to help emerging businesses innovate, thrive, and succeed.